Not really, we got lots of others in person, I guess so.
There's Commissioner Bell.
Bill, I'm gonna have you lead the flag salute.
I'd be happy to.
I'm sure you would.
I'll belt it out.
Okay.
Are we singing it today?
No,
Please.
And then the Super Bowl.
I just remember in grade school, I always did it, and then it sort of passed out of fashion, Chris, and nobody.
You're the overachiever.
Yeah.
Every morning.
Billy, would you lead the flag salute today? Yes, Mrs. Chadwick.
Okay, are we ready? Ready to go, okay. Go ahead. Okay, we'll call our meeting to order this morning. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, February 14, Valentine's Day, 2024. We'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at exactly 9 a.m. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed and you can join us online by going to our website. Live stream is also available at tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. I will mention the reason there's only one of us here today is Commissioner Bell is a bit under the weather, but is online, and so we do have a quorum. And Commissioner Scar is traveling home, I believe, from the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phone. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 o'clock p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be emailed to the Board of Commissioners Office, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. So I'll ask again, do we have anyone signed up in the room, or is anyone online for comments at all today?
We have neither.
Nothing. All right, thank you. So with that, we'll move along and ask everyone to be sure and sign in the guest list if you need to. And we'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask our County Council to lead us, please.
Thank you, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Council.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'll ask one more time, any public comment on any matter not before us today? I don't see any, so we'll ask if there are any non-agenda items to come before us that are not published in the agenda. I'm not seeing any, then we'll move right through the agenda, starting with our Community Health Center. We have a presentation on 2023 well water testing program. Amy McVitie, I believe, is online, and so we have some slides, and I believe we also have comments for some of us, so and the printed documents, so go right ahead.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but I also have joining me today Ed Colson, who is also with the Health Center, and he'll be adding a little bit to our presentation today. So I'll just go ahead and share those slides. So like I said, I'll be talking about the well water testing program that we ran this past summer. And I'll dive right in. The reason that we decided to test well water as the health center is that we know that a lot of residents in Tillamook County get their water from wells, but we don't know very much about those wells. They're not typically required to be tested, and little information is just available about them. So we don't know how often folks choose to test or why they do or don't. So by offering this free testing, we were just hoping to help get to know our well owners a little bit more, get to know the wells in Tillamook County, and hopefully help people have safer, healthier water while also building those relationships. So this program was funded under Public Health Modernization, which is a program from the Oregon Health Authority. We are just working to update the public health system and make sure that we're meeting new needs and challenges. This kind of fit under both our environmental health and emergency preparedness areas, which I will let Ed talk about a little bit more.
Yes, Commissioners, Public Health Modernization was enacted by Oregon Health Authority for all 36 counties within the state in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. There are 4 areas of public health modernization that they are looking to increase to make health equity and preparedness available towards everybody within the state of Oregon. Those 4 areas are communicable disease protection, where the detection and response to traditional and emerging infectious diseases are outlined and prepared for. There's also health promotion, disease and injury prevention, to support environments and policies that provide access to well-being for everyone. Then there's equitable access to health services, which ensures preventative services are widely available. And where our program right here with environmental health and emergency preparedness, it is limiting environmental health risk to human health. And so with this program we did with our well water testing, we were able to tackle a lot of different portions of the modernization initially for us to get a good picture of what well water would be and its effects within the community here in regards to preparing for emergency preparedness, knowing what the quality of the water was for the environmental health aspect, and also in response to clean air, safe water, effects of climate change and extreme weather events, and then food safety.
Thanks, Ed. So with all that information, we launched this testing program where we offered free testing to private well owners in Tillamook County. At the end of the program, we had 57 good faith signups. We had a couple of like duplicates or folks who didn't qualify for the program. So 57 was the amount that actually qualified at the end. And we completed a total of tests on 25 wells, 25 nitrate tests and 24 total coliform bacteria tests. We spread information about this program through a number of different avenues, largely online, including our Facebook page and website. We also had a PSA and a hometown news interview running on KTIL on the radio, and we had ads in both the Tillamook County, the Headlight Herald, and the Pioneer. And as you can see in this graph on the right on this slide, most of the signups that we got, folks said that they heard about it through the newspaper, but we were also really glad to hear that a lot of folks heard about it from the radio, online, and in fact through word of mouth. So we really appreciate the community for sharing the news about this program and getting it out. In terms of the folks that signed up, we did gather some information about the people that were testing and like the information about their wells. So we know that most of the wells that we tested were owned by the folks that were testing the well. And also most of the properties were occupied by the person testing full time. So there were a couple of folks that were either like rentals or renting their property, or they, were testing a vacation home that they rent out to other folks. One of the biggest pieces of information that we got out of this, honestly, is that 100% of the wells that we tested also had a septic system on the property, which is really important because septic systems can be linked to contamination if that is a concern. So it's really important to know that folks have septic systems, so that's something to look out for, and knowing whether or not folks are keeping up the maintenance of their septic systems. In terms of the types of wells, there are a few different ways that you can build a well. I'm not going to get into the specifics on that, but we did find that most of the wells we tested were drilled wells, which is one of the deepest types of well and one of the most resistant to contamination, which is good to hear. And we also found that a lot of people actually don't know what type of well they have. So that's maybe an area that we can provide some more education in, is just helping folks get to know the well that is on their property and know what to be looking out for, because different types of wells have different risks. We also
stop you
asked
for a moment and ask a
Yes.
question here. What's the difference between drilled and bored?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear about that as well. It's mostly just the digging technique that they use to build the well, and then the way that they, I believe, shore up like the sides of the wells. So drilled wells, I believe, go a little bit deeper than bored wells and then have slightly more protection from contamination.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, please feel free to stop me at any time with other questions. But we also asked folks what they use their well water for. For the most part, everyone used their water for pretty much all common household purposes, as you can see listed here. We did note that there were a handful of people that actually don't drink their well water, which was an interesting thing to note because, as we'll see later, most people believe that their well water is safe to drink. So we didn't ask further clarifying questions on why people might choose not to drink their well water, but that is something to keep in mind, that there's potentially some concerns about water quality or aesthetic reasons why people might not be drinking that water. We also asked whether or not people had tested their well recently. It is recommended by the EPA that you test your well water every year, which we know often doesn't happen and is part of why we decided to offer this program. The results here are broken out by the results on the coliform bacteria test, which is one of the 2 types of tests that we did. So the orange shows the results for folks that did have a positive coliform test. The gray is the negative, and then the blue is just for everyone. As you can see, most people had not tested their well at all in the last 10 years. And there were a number of people as well who didn't know whether they had tested their well in the last 10 years. So again, this is something important where we really want to make sure that folks know that they're supposed to be testing their well and provide them the resources to hopefully improve that. For the folks that had tested their well in the last 10 years, pretty much everyone had tested for total coliform bacteria, and then most had also tested for nitrates and arsenic. And those 3 combined are the 3 that are required under Oregon state law to test when there's a real estate transaction with a property that has a well. And a number had also tested for lead, which is a pretty common health concern. So we also asked folks whether or not they had tested and why they had tested or not. The most common reasons for testing, like I said before, it is required under Oregon law to test if you are selling a property with a well. So that was the most common by far, is just that it was required. And a number of people also said that they just felt like they should be testing. They didn't really clarify why. So we aren't sure if that was for health reasons, if they felt like their water wasn't tasting good or it was a strange color or what other reasons, but people believe that they should be doing it, but maybe just aren't. And then in terms of not testing, these were kind of what we expected to see, as a lot of people didn't know how or where to test their well water. We don't have a lab that does testing here in Tillamook County, so that is a pretty big barrier for folks. And also, it's just one of those things that's really easy to forget about. You know, you're supposed to do it every year, but it can pass you by pretty quickly. And then before you know it, it's been several years and you haven't tested the water. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is trying to provide frequent reminders to well owners to test their water. So now the actual results for the testing. I am really happy to report that we did not find any wells that were positive for nitrates, which would be anything above the maximum contaminant level set by the EPA. We did find, however, that a quarter of the wells that we tested were positive for total coliform bacteria. And within those, there were a handful that had E. coli found in the well. I'm not reporting that exact number because it was a low number, but that is, again, something to keep in mind, is that when a well is damaged or there's, wastewater leakage, things like that, that can lead to bacteria in the well, and that can cause some health issues. So we want to make sure that folks are testing, and if they find anything, they're getting their well repaired and then decontaminated so that they have safe water to drink. One of the last things that we looked at was just what knowledge and beliefs folks had around their well water. So we asked them to read these 5 statements and then rate how much they agreed with each of them. On this next slide, I'm going to have some numbers, which are like the average responses for these. What we want to see is anything above a 3, because a 3 means that everyone was on average neutral, did not agree or disagree. So we want to see agreement, which would be above a 3. However, you can see that the only number, or the only statement that we had agreement above a 3 on consistently was that well water is safe and high quality. So folks are pretty confident that their well is safe, but then when it came to knowing how to test their well or where to get more information about it, folks do not have that knowledge. So that's something that we really want to work on, is making sure that people have access to those resources and know where they can go to get that information. This chart is just another way of displaying that same information. The orange and yellow here indicates that folks were disagreeing with the statements. The blue indicates that they agreed. Again, we would like to see more blue than the orange and yellow, but unfortunately we're seeing a lot of orange and yellow. So that shows us that there's some gaps in our education and knowledge. Like I said before, we had 57 people sign up for this program, but only 25 tested. So all the information that I've shown you so far has been specifically for the people that actually tested. So just going really briefly into some of the information that we gathered for folks that signed up but didn't test, because that also gives us some really good information. The reasons for testing or not testing were pretty much the same at the county level, but we did note that cost was much more commonly a factor for those that did not sign up, or that did sign up but then did not test. So that indicates to us that maybe there were some other barriers going on in addition to cost, and that's something that we would like to address if we do a future iteration of this program. And then in terms of well characteristics, we continued to see the same trend that most of the wells were drilled, but a lot of people, I think nearly a third of them, did not know what type of well they had. So again, that's a really big gap in knowledge. And then again, as I addressed before, some people don't drink their water, but we don't know why. And that's again something we would like to look into in the future. And then this is just another graph of the well types in the county. You can see, again, over half of them are those drilled wells, and then almost a third don't know what type of well they have. And then we have just a comparison of those knowledge and attitude statements with the county level, everyone on the left, and then just the people that tested on the right. You can see there's pretty little difference here. Again, a lot of orange, which is what we don't want to see. So that's an area of education that we will be working on. So our big takeaways from this, as I've said a couple of times, we saw that drilled wells are the most common in Tillamook County, which these have the lowest contamination risk. So that's really good to hear, is that hopefully these will be as safe as possible. We found that nitrate contamination is generally not a concern in Tillamook County because in the wells that we tested, absolutely none of them were positive for nitrate. We do know that, though, that total coliform bacteria and E. coli contamination may be more of a concern. So it's really, really important that folks are regularly inspecting their well, getting it tested, because you often don't know that this contamination is there until you've tested for it. We also found that well owners generally believe that their water is safe, but most have not tested recently to confirm that. And again, that's just not something you can know based on taste or color alone. And generally, we found that well owners just don't really have the knowledge to regularly test and care for their well. So we really want to make sure that we are reaching folks with that information and finding ways to spread the word about what they can do to keep their water safe. So that is everything I have about this program. We will be working in the future to use this knowledge to develop future iterations of this program and develop more education and community building around wells. I want to give a really big thank you to our team at TCCHC for supporting all of this work, as well as to Water Lab Corporation, who was our testing partner for this. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you, Amy and Ed. Good information. Commissioner Bell, I'm sure you've got a question or two.
Well, Amy, I just want to say thank you for this service. I think it's an outstanding service and really important topic. And like you said, there are so many people who get their water from wells in Tillamook County, and it's very interesting to see that almost none of them are doing annual testing. And, or maybe the people who responded to the study are not doing annual testing, and that's why they responded. But in any case, it's a huge opportunity for learning community-wide, including for me, who I get my house water from a well, and listening to your presentation, I realized there are a lot of things I don't know about my well. So I bet that's true of a lot of citizens. So thank you for this work. I think it's really important, and I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got a question or two. I remember from my years on the Pacific City Joint Water Sanitary Authority, which at the time when I first joined that organization, there were 6 wells, and 3 in one area and 3 in maybe a half-mile away, but they were all within about 200 or 300 yards of the ocean. And our biggest fear was that even a very minor earthquake or some disturbance would render all those wells useless because they'd be saltwater wells. And so some years ago then, this has been 20 plus years ago, we put in a packaged water treatment plant on Horn Creek, which is a year-round stream, a fish-bearing stream, so you had like 6 weeks out of the year to work in it. but it got done, and that's where the water comes from. And so I became a little bit familiar with some of the drinking water requirements, both federal and state. Could you, either of you, speak to how wells are tested, or are they exempt, or how do they comply with what a public treated water system would require?
Yeah, so the only requirement when it is a private well, so that means it serves, I believe, less than 3 homes or fewer than 20 people. So basically, a single well connected to a single house is typically what we think of. The only requirements for testing or quality is that when a property that has a well is sold or purchased, you have to test for total coliform bacteria, nitrates, and arsenic. There are no requirements around what the results of those tests are. You just have to do the test and provide the results to both the person making the purchase and to the state. So that means there's very little regulation, which is a big part of why we wanted to do this program, because we just did not know what was going on with the wells in the county.
Thank you. Do you have any knowledge or indications of how our groundwater supply in Tillamook County is? Is it stable or shrinking overall, or maybe enlarging after major storms? I know it goes up and down every year depending on the time of year and the rains and so on, but have you seen any long-term trends about groundwater in this part of Oregon?
That was beyond the scope of this project, because we were really focused on the water that folks are drinking and the quality of it, because we were focused on the health side of things. But that is something that I believe the state would probably have more information about.
And I know they have a drinking water group over there. I'm not sure what the actual title is. I had a friend who worked there for a number of years, and it was quite technical, and their biggest issue seemed to be on the east side of Oregon rather than here, because some of those aquifers were being depleted fairly rapidly, particularly when you get outside of Bend. So I think maybe in terms of water, Tillamook County is in good shape, just my very amateur opinion. Is that a fair statement? We recharge our wells and then they are tested, but we also have public water.
I believe so from what I know, but I am far from an expert.
Okay. Well, thank you. Commissioner Bell, any final questions for these folks?
No questions, just thank you. I appreciate your work.
Well, I'll also thank you for your work, and perhaps you can join the commission again and give us an update on these findings. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have consideration of a personal services agreement with Tillamook Bay Community College for customized training and development services. And we have in person this morning Lieutenant Seaholm to speak to that subject.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So for review and consideration, this is the personal service agreement between Tillamook County and Tillamook Bay Community College. We've had a partnership with them for the last handful of years where we're able to offer education services for people that we supervise, adult justice involved individuals under community corrections. So this is just updating and changing this program slightly. So we have $25,000 allotted to this program. And this would be for anybody who needs or wants to get their GED or continue any education. So what we'll try to do is pay for equivalent to 3 college credits. So if they want to do that with a welding program or maybe the CDL or just take an accredited college class, they could do that. And so kind of get their foot in the door to become a student over there at TBCC and see if they want to further any education.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bell?
I think that's a great program. I'm really glad that we do that. It's, you know, for incarcerated individuals to have the chance to further their education or set themselves up better for job opportunities. I think it's terrific. So thank you.
And that's, in my opinion, one of the best things that comes out of having a local college. Probably a little easier to set it up than if it were elsewhere. What is the source of the $25,000?
Sure. So it's a combination between our grant and aid, which is our main funding source for community corrections, and then also Justice Reinvestment Grant. So which is a criminal justice commission grant that focuses on reduction in prison usage and reduction in recidivism. So we try to tailor the programs for addressing risk and needs, and education and employment is one of those domains that we try to focus on.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Bell, last call. Any additional questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, then would you care to offer a motion to take that forward?
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, I move approval of a personal services agreement with Tillamook Bay Community College for customized training and development services.
I will second that motion. Ask if there are any further discussions, questions. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Lieutenant. All right, item number 7. Consideration of a contract for goods with Pacific County for the purchase of a 2024 Trail King TKT 60L tilt deck trailer. Chris is on, I guess. I haven't seen him, but there.
Well,
oh, we've got
I am
somebody
substitute
from,
Chris today.
Okay, go right ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jasper Lynn standing in for Chris Lady as part of the Engineering Department of Public Works. The contract we're presenting you today is for a 2024 tilt deck trailer. We're hoping to purchase through Pacific County. We were actually shopping for this precise trailer with the manufacturer, and the lag time is about 9 months to be able to get that. Whereas Pacific County had recently incorrectly purchased this exact trailer that we're looking for. And so it can adjust our time from a 9-month delay to picking it up this month with plenty of lead time for the paving season. This particular trailer is something that we're looking at as a way of increasing our ability for paving in these public roads. It particularly is an advantage in that it has a knife edge ramp on it, so that when we're trying to load one of our heavier equipments, particularly the rollers, we have a smoother transition up onto a trailer that's a full 3-axle and capable of handling that weight. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
To Commissioner Bell.
No questions. I'm glad you found one that you can get right away. That's terrific.
Well, it's my question. As I recall, Pacific County is in Washington State, which is on the Long Beach Peninsula. Is that, am I thinking of the correct place?
That is correct. They are the furthest southwestern county in Washington.
So how did we, Tillamook County, get a line on that in another state, another county?
So through the distributor that we were already talking with to find this particular trailer, Pacific County had purchased this trailer, but it was not the actual model that they were needing to get. So they had essentially mistakenly purchased it and were interacting with the folks that we were interacting with. So it just so happened that they knew where there was one recently sold within our vicinity that would be a faster availability.
So their mistake is our benefit, we could say.
Indeed.
Wonderful. Good. Well, I'm always glad to see that local governments work together, because while we stand alone in some respects, we're really all trying to do the same thing. And so that certainly works for my part of all of this. So I didn't see a dollar amount. Could you give us an approximate amount?
Sure. The cost of this particular trailer is $52,440.
And no cents. Even money.
Makes a lot of sense from this end.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Bell? If not, we'll entertain a motion for this request.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of a contract for goods with Pacific County for the purchase of a 2024 Trail King TKT 60L tilt deck trailer.
And I will second. Any more questions, comments? All in
No.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Jasper.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, to move along to item 8, consideration of an Oregon Department of Environmental Quality voluntary cleanup agreement for the review and oversight of contaminated property at the site of the former Wheeler Lumber Mill property located at Highway 101 and Marine Drive, Township 2 North, Range 10 West, Section 2, tax lots 300, 301, 400, 4700, and 4800 in Wheeler, Oregon. And with us this morning, Chris Chiola from DEQ, not DEQ, Department of Community Development, I beg your pardon. So, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Chris Chiola, Department of Community Development. Good morning, Commissioners. This letter is an agreement as part of the EPA Brownfields grant that Tillamook County has, and we're conducting several phase 1 and phase 2 reviews on these sites. This one, there's a couple things there that DEQ wants to review. So this is a standard letter of agreement with them. And to give some background on it, Commissioner Olson already gave all the tax lot information, but we're using EPA Brownfield grant funds to conduct a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment for the former mill site in Wheeler. DEQ agrees to review environmental documents submitted by you on your behalf regarding the investigation and or cleanup of the above referenced site and review related information. There is no cost to Tillamook County under this agreement. DEQ is waiving the required minimum deposits and things like that. It's just a formal agreement that they have to have in place before we do all that. So there's no obligation on Tillamook County. It's been reviewed by County Council, and Rachel is also part of the group that's managing this EPA grant. So this is just a standard language. And are there any questions about it?
Commissioner Bell, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. My only question, every time I see or hear of the brownfields funding one thing or another, I think that's really a good thing. I'm wondering, when is the brownfield source of money going to run out of money? They seem to have a bottomless pit of money, and maybe that's a good thing because some of these problems are quite serious.
The money comes from the federal government through the EPA, and there are different funding sources and cycles that they go through. And it really depends on their funding from the top down. And a lot of this money came from parts of the infrastructure money that came out. Some years there's a lot, some years there's not quite as much. But we ended up getting $500,000 to review and assess 4 sites in Tillamook County. So the sites that have happened in the past have gotten either a clean bill of slate or have had funding to clean them up and put them into development so they can be redeveloped for other property owners. So it is a big pot of money out there, but it does dry up from time to time.
So
Right
like,
now it happens to be full.
like everything else, there's a budget cycle. And so now I just wondered, I know there's been lots of brownfield activity across Oregon. And like I said, I think that's in large part a very good thing, because years ago, people who had a small service station or whatever, they didn't really care much about where certain chemicals went, and they went into the ground, and that doesn't work for anybody, particularly when we just heard earlier this morning, a lot of people got their drinking water straight out of the ground without any treatment and so on. So, okay, very good. Then I'll make a last call to Commissioner Bell. Anything you've thought of that you'd like to question Chris on?
No questions, but I'm fully supportive of the grant and the program. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to take this forward.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of an Oregon Department of Environmental Quality voluntary cleanup agreement for the review and oversight of contaminated property at the site of the former Wheeler Lumber Mill property located at Highway 101 at Marine Drive, Township 2N, Range 10W, Section 2, tax lots 300, 301, 400, 4700, and 4800 in Wheeler, Oregon.
And I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, we've got a couple of budget committee, and I don't see Sean here, but I think I can speak to the matters before us. I think in the very recent past, we appointed 3 members to the county's budget committee. There are 6. There are the 3 commissioners, and we had 3 vacancies come up by virtue of my moving to a commissioner position. That opened 1 position, and the other 2, for several reasons, needed to step down, and they did. So all of a sudden, half our budget committee was vacant, half the seats. And so we went through a process, appointed Three, I think there were 4 applicants, all qualified, but we selected 3. And when we appointed them the first time, we just appointed them. What these 2 motions do is set their length of term so that they're staggered. I think one for 1 year, one for 2, and one for 3, so that they don't all come vacant again or need to be considered for reappointment. So those are the 2 before us. Now, one is for the Tillamook County Budget Committee, and the other is for the Compensation Committee. The Compensation Committee is those same 3 individuals minus the 3 commissioners, and their charge is to recommend salaries for elected officials. I served on that committee for quite a number of years, and it's a mix of both art and science. There's lots of comparables, but the comparables are really not all that comparable because no 2 counties are the same. The duties of elected officials, while similar, are usually different. And some counties you do 3 or 4 more things than another county, and then there's a range of duties. However, you ultimately end up with a recommendation, and that's how elected official salaries are set, trying to be comparable, competitive with the markets and like counties across Oregon or even the whole region. So with that, I'll ask Commissioner Bell, did you have anything you wanted to add to what I just said about those 2 matters before us? Oh, and Sean is on. I see she came up. Well, I beg your pardon, I guess, if I'd looked up. So let me ask our treasurer then, Sean Blanchard, did I recite all that correctly, and would you please add to it?
You did, Doug. Commissioner Olson, you did a wonderful job. I would just cite the ORS 294.414 parentheses 5 that requires the staggered commitment for these budget committee members.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Bell, questions for our treasurer?
I don't have questions. I think it was a good catch. As you mentioned, we have appointed these individuals. They're willing to serve, and we do want the terms to be staggered so that we don't end up in this position again with 3 vacancies. So I'm grateful that Sean caught this, and also that the committee members are willing to change the length of their terms.
So how, Sean, how did you select who had a 1 year and who had a 2 year and a 3 year? Did you draw that out of a hat, or how does that work?
Isabel and I just drew it out of a hat and picked and choose, or not picked and choose, but we just, drew it out of a hat.
When I drew something out of a hat, it came up 7 1/8. So different. All right. I'll move along. Okay, so let's consider first the matter of to the Budget Committee. So go ahead, and I'll accept a motion on that if that's your pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Board Order Number 24-008 in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Budget Committee.
And I will second. Any further questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, then on to the matter of the Compensation Board. Same thing.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Board Order 24-009 in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Compensation Board.
And I will second. Any further questions, discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank you, Sean.
commissioners.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, we're down to item number 10, board concerns, non-agenda items. So Commissioner Bell, anything that should come before us that is not on the published agenda?
No, I'd just like to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Today, as you mentioned earlier, is Valentine's Day for those who are celebrating. And happy birthday to the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon is 165 years today. And I'm thinking about my grandmother today, who told me many years ago when I was a child, she had a spectacular flower garden. And she told me that the way to remember when to prune your roses is to do it on Valentine's Day. So I think about her every year on this day. And I assume that I think the board briefing is on our list of announcements, but I assume that we won't do that today in the absence of Commissioner Scar.
Yes, thank you. I was going to mention that typically there's a board briefing at 2 o'clock on the same day as a board where it's a bit less formal, where a number of items are brought by the separate commissioners and discussed. And we usually have our chief of staff there along with sometimes with legal counsel and can talk about a variety of issues. But since Commissioner Bell is not here and Commissioner Scar is traveling, we will cancel that today. So for the record, there will be no board briefing today at 2 p.m. I believe we're scheduled, well, let's see, a week from now. I don't believe we have a board briefing. I think it's a work session with Portland State University on some other strategic plan. Is that correct, Commissioner Bell?
It is. Yes.
Okay. So with that, I'll read a few announcements here. As mentioned, we will cancel the meeting today at 2 p.m. So we'll skip over the rest of that. The commissioners will hold an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub I on Friday, February 16th at 3 o'clock p.m. to conduct a performance evaluation. The executive session will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. This executive session is not open to the public. President's Day is an observed holiday for the county and the Oregon State Circuit Court. All county offices in Tillamook County Courthouse and the Tillamook County Library, administrative offices in the jail and the Justice Facility, Public Works Department, Department of Community Development, Surveyor's Office, and the Health and Human Services Departments and clinics. And the state court will be closed on Monday, February 19, 2024. There is no board briefing scheduled for Wednesday, February 21, 24, week from today, as I just mentioned. The commissioners will attend a work session on the committee on the Committee on Vision, Mission, and Values on Wednesday, February 21, 2024 at 2 o'clock p.m. The work session will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The conference number is 1-971-254-3149. Conference ID is 469-778-911#. So with that, last call for anyone, including Commissioner Bell. Anything to come before the commission this morning?
No, thank you, Doug.
No. All right, so it's 9:42, and we will adjourn the meeting of the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners. Well, you got off pretty easy today there, Bill.
I sure did.
See
We
now,
all did.
this stuff now, I guess we all sign